Sherry, here's a check for $5 million. Please leave my son. In the luxurious coffee shop, an elegantly dressed middle-aged woman pushed a check in front of Sherry, her eyes sweeping contemptuously over Sherry's faded jeans. Sherry's fingers, which were gripping the water glass, turned slightly white, but she still maintained a polite smile. Penny, Porter and I are truly in love. Really? Penny scoffed. Sherry, your Sioux family has been bankrupt for a year now. You can't even afford tuition. What makes you think you can be with my son? Porter is about to graduate from Harvard Business School and will be the vice president of the Qin Group when he returns to China, while you... She paused deliberately, looking Sherry up and down. And you didn't even finish college, and now you're working as a waitress, right? Do you think you're good enough for Porter? Every word felt like a needle pricking Sherry's heart, but she still stood tall. I will finish my studies, and I'm already doing an internship. An internship? Working as a receptionist at a small company like that? Penny made no attempt to hide the sarcasm in her eyes. Sherry, let me tell you the truth, Porter is getting engaged to Linda, the heiress of the Lin Group, next month. The Lin family and our Qin family are a perfect match, it's a match made in heaven. Sherry looked up abruptly, her eyes filled with disbelief. No way. Porter told me last week that he loves me and that we'd get married after I graduate. Huh, you actually believe men's sweet talk? Penny pulled another photo out of her bag and pushed it over. This is a photo of them together under the Eiffel Tower last week. In the photo, Porter is intimately embracing an elegant woman, both smiling brightly, with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Sherry felt as if her heart was being violently gripped, the pain almost unbearable. The man who had vowed to marry no one but her was now seeing other women while making promises of eternal love with her. Does Porter know you came to see me today? Sherry asked, fighting back tears. Of course he knows, Penny said coldly. He just can't bear to tell you himself. Sherry, be smart, take this money and disappear from Porter's world forever. Sherry slowly stood up, without touching the check. Thank you for the coffee, and please tell Porter that no matter how poor I am, I don't need his charity. I wish him and Linda happiness. After saying that, she turned and left, her steps firm, only her slightly trembling shoulders betraying her true emotions. Stepping out of the coffee shop, the blinding sunlight made her dizzy. A year ago, she was still the heiress of the Sioux family, and she and Porter were the envy of everyone as a golden couple. However, her father's company suddenly went bankrupt, leaving him with huge debts, and soon after, her parents died in a car accident, plunging her from the heights of success into despair. That year, she worked part-time while studying, taking on several jobs to pay for her tuition and living expenses, as well as to help her parents pay off some of their debts. Even so, she never asked Porter for help because she believed their relationship was pure and innocent and did not want it to be tainted by money. How ridiculous it all seems now. Back in her cramped rented room, Sherry finally broke down in tears. She cried for her parents' passing, for her family's decline, for her boyfriend's betrayal. She cried for what seemed like forever before wiping away her tears and taking out her phone to dial that familiar number. The phone rang for a long time before being answered. Porter's gentle voice came from the other end. Sherry, did you miss me? I'm a bit busy here, can I call you later? In the past, Sherry would have thought this was considerate, but now she just felt it was extremely hypocritical. Porter, I saw your mother today, Sherry cut to the chase. There was a moment of silence on the phone, and when Porter spoke again, his tone was noticeably different. Sherry, let me explain. So it's true? You're getting engaged to Linda? Sherry interrupted him. It's just a business marriage, I love you. Porter quickly said, but the Qin family is facing a crisis and needs the Lin family's support. Once I'm in power, I'll definitely divorce my wife and marry you. Sherry's heart turned completely cold. This was the man she had loved for 4 years, who wanted both the benefits of a business marriage and to keep her as his mistress. Porter, it's over, Sherry said calmly. From now on, don't contact me again. Sherry, don't be stubborn. How will you live without me? You can't even afford tuition, that's none of your concern. Sherry hung up the phone and blocked all of Porter's contact information. After doing all this, she slumped into a chair, feeling all her strength drain away. That night, Sherry developed a high fever. In her delirium, she had a strange dream. In the dream, an old man with white hair said to her, "Child, you have unfinished business. In 3 months, you will face a turning point in your destiny." The next morning, Sherry was awakened by a knock on the door. Upon opening it, the delivery man handed her an envelope containing an acceptance letter from a foreign university and proof of a full scholarship. Sherry was stunned. She had indeed applied to this university, but given her financial situation, it was impossible for her to attend. But now, with a full scholarship, after much deliberation, she decided to accept the opportunity. There was nothing left for her to miss here. 3 months later, Sherry looked back at the city one last time at the airport before resolutely stepping through security. Unbeknownst to her, the high fever and strange dream of that night, and the sudden full scholarship she received, all concealed a hidden secret. "Sherry, the representatives from M Group have arrived and are waiting for you in conference room 1. The assistant's voice pulled Sherry back to reality from her design sketches. She looked up, revealing a refined and capable face. 5 years had passed, the once naive girl had transformed into a powerful and confident career woman. "Okay, I'll be right there." Sherry stood up, straightened her suit skirt, picked up the prepared documents, and walked towards the conference room. Over 5 years, she studied diligently abroad, graduating with top honors and securing a position at a renowned international design firm. With her exceptional talent and hard work, she quickly rose to prominence and is now the company's youngest design director. The company sent her back to China to oversee a collaborative project with the domestic giant, M Group. If the project succeeds, she is expected to be promoted to creative director for the Asia-Pacific region. Inside the conference room, the representative from M Group was facing away from the door, looking out the window. Sherry pushed open the door and entered, smiling. "Hello, I'm Sherry, the design director for this project. I apologize for keeping you waiting." The man turned around, revealing a handsome yet cold and hard face. He was about 30 years old, with deep-set features, sharp eyes, and an aura of power emanating from him. A fleeting hint of surprise crossed his eyes the moment he saw Sherry, but he quickly regained his composure. "Jeff, CEO of M Group." Sherry's heart skipped a beat. Jeff, the enigmatic president of the M Group, rarely appeared in the media and was said to be ruthless, having led the M Group into the world's top 100 in just a few years. She hadn't expected him to personally participate in the project meeting. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Jeff." Sherry quickly composed herself and flashed a professional smile. "Let's begin." The meeting went remarkably smoothly. Jeff spoke little, but every question he asked hit the nail on the head. Sherry was well prepared and handled the situation with ease. "Sherry, you've been abroad for many years. How much do you know about the domestic market?" Jeff suddenly asked. "Although I've been abroad for 5 years, I've always kept up with the developments in China," Sherry answered confidently. "And our team has done thorough market research, as shown in the report." She pushed a document towards Jeff, who took it, his fingertips inadvertently brushing against the back of her hand. A strange electric current sent a jolt through them both. "Very good," Jeff nodded after quickly flipping through it. "I hope we have a pleasant working relationship." After seeing Jeff off, Sherry breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she returned to her office, her phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, a gentle smile spread across her face. "Mommy," came a soft, childlike voice from the other end of the line. "What time are you coming home today?" "Sweetie, Mommy will come home from get off work and bring you your favorite strawberry cake, okay?" Sherry said softly. "Okay. Mommy is the best." "Oh, by the way, there was a drawing competition at kindergarten today. I drew Mommy and me, and the teacher gave me a little red flower." "Really? Our Gary is amazing. Mommy will have to take a good look at that painting when she gets back." Sherry's face beamed with happiness as she hung up the phone. 5 years ago, she went abroad alone, and shortly after enrolling at school, she discovered she was pregnant. Shocked, she decided to keep the baby. Her son, Gary, is 4 years old, smart and adorable, and he's her everything. After get off work, Sherry bought a cake as promised and went home. As soon as she opened the door, a little bundle of joy jumped into her arms. "Mommy." Sherry picked up her son and kissed his soft cheek. "Let Mommy see where the drawing of the little red flower you got today is?" Gary excitedly pulled her into the living room, pointing to a painting on the wall. "Look. This is Mommy, and this is me." "But..." His little face suddenly fell. "All the other kids' paintings have their dads in them, but mine doesn't." Sherry felt a pang of pain in her heart. This wasn't the first time Gary had asked about his father. "Sweetie, didn't Mommy say that Daddy works far away? But he never calls us." Gary pouted. "Mommy, does Daddy not like us?" Sherry hugged her son tightly, her eyes slightly moist. How could she tell her child that she didn't even know who his father was? That night she had a fever and was delirious, but when she woke up the next day everything was normal, until she discovered she was pregnant 2 months later. She had suspected Porter, but the timing didn't add up. Besides, Porter was now married to Linda and was the president of the Cheen Group. She didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. "Of course Daddy likes Gary," Sherry comforted him softly. "He's just too busy with work." "Okay, let's go eat cake." "Okay." Gary was still a child and his attention was quickly diverted. That evening, after putting her son to sleep, Sherry stood by the window, gazing blankly at the city lights. For the past 2 weeks since returning home, she had been avoiding thinking about the possibility of running into acquaintances, especially Porter, whose company she'd heard was near the M Group. Fate seemed to have hurt her worries, and gave her a surprise the very next day. "Sherry, there's a business cocktail party tonight. The company hopes you can attend and make more connections in the industry." On Monday morning, Sherry was informed by her assistant. Sherry initially wanted to decline, but considering that Gary was about to start elementary school and needed more resources and connections, she nodded in agreement. The cocktail party was held in the banquet hall of a 5-star hotel. Sherry, dressed in a simple black evening gown, was elegant and poised, attracting much attention as soon as she entered. She calmly conversed with various guests, demonstrating her professionalism. "Sherry? Is it really you?" A familiar yet unfamiliar voice sounded from behind. Sherry stiffened and slowly turned around. Porter stood in front of her, his eyes filled with amazement and disbelief. "I thought you looked like me from afar. I can't believe it really is you. When did you come back to the country?" 5 years had passed, and Porter had become more mature and composed, but his eyes held a complex emotion that Sherry couldn't decipher. "Long time no see," Sherry said with a distant yet polite nod. Porter's expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and said, "Sherry, do we have to be so distant? I know I was wrong back then, but I had my reasons." "Let's not dwell on the past," Sherry interrupted him. "I'm doing very well now. I heard you're now the design director at NG, that's amazing." Porter looked at her intently. "You've changed a lot, you're more beautiful and more confident." "Thank you for the compliment." "Excuse me, I saw someone I know." Sherry didn't want to talk anymore and prepared to leave. Porter grabbed her wrist. "Sherry, give me a chance to make amends. The Cheen family is preparing to expand its design business, we can cooperate." "No need," Sherry pulled her hand away. "M Group is already our partner." "M Group? Jeff's company?" Porter's face darkened slightly. "Sherry, Jeff is not a simple man. You'd better stay away from him." Sherry found it amusing. "Porter, we are just business partners. You don't need to worry about us." Just then, a sharp female voice interrupted. "Porter, who is this?" Linda stepped forward, intimately taking Porter's arm, and warily eyeing Sherry. She was dressed in designer clothes and adorned with jewels, but compared to Sherry's natural elegance, she seemed overly deliberate. "This is Sherry, the design director of NG, Porter introduced. "Sherry, this is my wife, Linda." "Ex-girlfriend Sherry?" Linda's expression immediately changed, her tone sarcastic. I heard that after the Sue family went bankrupt, you had to drop out of school and work as a waitress. Now you're a design director? You've really gone from rags to riches. These words were extremely rude, and people around them were already looking over. Porter awkwardly tugged at his wife, Linda. Sherry, however, didn't get angry but laughed instead, not as good as Linda, who was born into a phoenix's nest. Linda paused for a moment before realizing this was a sarcastic remark about her relying on her family background, and immediately flew into a rage. What do you mean? Literal meaning. Sherry elegantly sipped her champagne. Excuse me, I must take my leave. Sherry, turning to leave, didn't notice that a gaze had been following her from the second-floor railing. Jeff, holding a wine glass, had witnessed everything, a playful glint in his eyes. The project progressed very smoothly, and Sherry's team's design proposal received unanimous approval from the senior management of the M Group. To celebrate, Jeff invited the project team to dinner. Dinner was held in a private room at an upscale restaurant. After a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere became lively. Sherry accidentally knocked over her water glass, soaking her clothes, and had to go to the restroom to clean up. Emerging from the restroom, she saw a familiar small figure in the hallway. Gary? Sherry exclaimed in surprise, what are you doing here? Gary turned around at the sound and ran over happily, Mommy. Jane and I are here to eat. Jane was the nanny he was referring to. Sherry knelt down and straightened her son's collar. Didn't I tell you that you should tell Mommy before Grandma brings you to a place like this? I wanted to surprise Mommy. Gary said sweetly. Mommy, do you think my bow tie looks good today? Sherry smiled and kissed her son's forehead. Handsome, my son is the most handsome. Just then, a deep voice came from behind. Sherry? Sherry froze, slowly rising and turning around. Jeff stood not far away, his gaze fixed on Gary, his eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't decipher. Jeff, this is my son, Gary. Sherry instinctively shielded the child behind her. Gary, call him Uncle. Gary stared wide-eyed at Jeff and suddenly blurted out, Uncle, you look just like me. Sherry was immediately embarrassed. Gary, don't talk nonsense. Jeff squatted down and looked Gary in the eye. Many people look alike, it's just a coincidence. No. Gary said seriously, your eyes are exactly the same as mine. Mommy, don't you think so? Sherry then noticed that Jeff and Gary's eyes were indeed extremely similar, both being a rare dark gray, and their eye shapes were exactly the same. She hadn't noticed it before. It's just kids talking nonsense, Jeff, don't mind him, Sherry quickly said. Jeff gave Gary a deep look, then said to Sherry, your son is adorable. How old is he? 4 years and 3 months, Sherry replied, a chill creeping down her spine. Gary's age, if you looked back, that was right before she conceived him abroad. Could it be? No, impossible. Although her memory of that night was hazy, how could she not recognize Jeff? They were from completely different worlds. Let me take you home, the child needs to rest, Jeff suddenly said. No need, Jeff, the nanny is waiting outside, Sherry politely declined. Jeff didn't insist, but glanced at Gary again before turning and leaving. Back home, Sherry was restless. She pulled out photos of Gary as a baby, and the more she looked, the more she felt Gary's features did resemble Jeff's. But could it just be her imagination? In the days that followed, Sherry noticed a subtle change in Jeff's attitude towards her. He remained strict at work, but occasionally showed unusual attention. What made her even more uneasy was that Gary often mentioned that uncle who looks like me and even asked her if she could see Jeff again. Fate seemed to have heard the child's wish. A week later, Gary's kindergarten held a parent-child activity, requiring at least one parent to attend. Sherry was busy with work, but she adjusted her schedule for her son. On the day of the event, when she arrived at the kindergarten, she saw Gary talking to a tall man from afar. As she got closer and saw the man's profile, Sherry dropped her bag with a thud. What was Jeff doing here? Jeff, what are you doing here? Sherry quickly stepped forward, pulled Gary behind her, and looked at Jeff warily. Jeff remained calm. I came to visit the principal to discuss the group's sponsorship project for the kindergarten, and I ran into Gary by chance. Mommy, Uncle is so amazing. He can fold paper airplanes and they fly really far. Gary said excitedly, clearly already fond of this uncle who looks like him. Sherry's alarm bells rang. What a coincidence. Why would someone like Jeff personally discuss a kindergarten funding project? Gary, go to the classroom and get ready. Mom will be right there, Sherry said, sending her son away. After Gary left, she looked directly at Jeff. Jeff, I don't understand what you're trying to do. Jeff looked at her intently. Sherry, 5 years ago, didn't you stay at the Blue Bay Hotel? Sherry shuddered. Blue Bay Hotel, that was the hotel she stayed at the night before leaving the country. Her rental agreement had expired, and she hadn't found a new place yet, so she stayed at the hotel for one night. That night she had a fever and was delirious. When she woke up the next day, she felt unusually tired. How did you know? Jeff didn't answer directly, but instead took a photo from his inside suit pocket and handed it to her. The photo showed a young woman sleeping. Although blurry, Sherry recognized it as herself from 5 years ago. I was also at the Blue Bay Hotel that night, attending a business cocktail party, when someone drugged my drink, Jeff said calmly. I mistakenly entered your room. I had to leave early the next morning due to urgent business, and by the time I came back to find you, you had already checked out. Sherry was struck dumb, staggering back a step. Impossible, that night wasn't a dream. I've been looking for you for 5 years, Jeff said, his gaze intense. Until we met again at the project meeting. Gary, is he my son? Sherry's mind went blank. So Gary's father wasn't Porter, but Jeff? The high and mighty president of the M Corporation? I don't know, she murmured. I had a fever that night, and my memory is very hazy. We can do a paternity test, Jeff suggested. If Gary is my son, I have the right to know he exists. Sherry spent the parent-child activity in a state of unease. After the activity, Jeff immediately suggested taking Gary for a paternity test. With mixed feelings, Sherry didn't refuse. 3 days later, the test results came back, confirming that Jeff and Gary were biologically father and son, with an accuracy rate of 99.99%. Looking at the report, Sherry slumped into her chair. After all these years, she finally knew who Gary's father was. Sherry, I want to reclaim my son, Jeff said firmly. And I want you to move in with me. What? Sherry looked at him in shock. Jeff, even if you are Gary's biological father, it doesn't mean we can live together. We don't know each other. Then let's start getting to know each other now. Jeff pressed on. Gary needs a complete family. And, he paused, I have a strong liking for you. That last sentence made Sherry's heart skip a beat. But she quickly calmed down. Jeff, feelings can't be forced. I can agree to you acknowledging Gary, but living together, this is too sudden. Give me at least one chance, Jeff said, looking at her. For Gary's sake, and for ours. Sherry was torn. To be fair, Jeff was handsome and wealthy, the dream lover of countless women. But after Porter's betrayal, she was more cautious about relationships. Moreover, the gap between them was too great. However, thinking of Gary's eyes yearning for a father's love, she wavered. I can agree to you spending time with Gary first, but as for other things, let nature take its course. A smile flashed in Jeff's eyes. Okay, let nature take its course. And so, Jeff began to appear frequently in Sherry and Gary's lives. He was not only a successful businessman but also a patient father, and quickly won Gary's affection. Sherry had to admit that watching the father and son interact was slowly melting her cold heart. However, the peaceful days didn't last long, and trouble soon followed. Porter, having somehow learned of Sherry's close relationship with Jeff, went to Sherry's company. Sherry, Jeff is not someone you can mess with, Porter said urgently. He has a complicated background and is ruthless. Stay away from him. Sherry found it ridiculous. Porter, we're over. It's my freedom to date whoever I want. I'm doing this for your own good. Porter grabbed her shoulders. I heard you two have a child? That's my child, isn't it? I knew it after that night. Let go. Sherry broke free from him. Gary isn't your child, he has nothing to do with you. Then he's Jeff's? Porter's face darkened. Sherry, you've been deceived. Jeff might be with you just to get revenge on me. Sherry was taken aback. Revenge on you? Porter seemed to realize his mistake and stammered, anyway, be careful. After Porter left, Sherry felt a growing sense of unease. Did Jeff already know her identity? Did he really have ulterior motives for approaching her? That evening, when Jeff picked her up from get off work, Sherry asked directly, You already knew I was Porter's ex-girlfriend? Jeff's expression remained unchanged. I found out when I was investigating your background. Why are you suddenly asking this? Did you approach me to get revenge on Porter? Sherry stared intently into his eyes. Jeff chuckled. Do you think I'm the kind of person who plays with emotions? I don't know what kind of person you are, Sherry said frankly. We don't really know each other. Jeff was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, Then let me tell you the truth. He started the car and drove towards the outskirts of the city. They eventually stopped in front of a cemetery. What are we doing here? Sherry asked, puzzled. Jeff led her to a tombstone inscribed with Tomb of the Goo Couple. These are my parents. Jeff's tone was calm but tinged with pain. 20 years ago, Porter's father, Jay, framed my father for business crimes in order to seize his company. My father, unable to bear the humiliation, committed suicide by jumping off a building, and my mother subsequently died of illness. Overnight, I went from being a young master of the Goo family to an orphan. Sherry stared at him in shock. She had heard about the Goo family's bankruptcy 20 years ago, but she didn't know the details were so tragic. Jay established the Cheen Group after acquiring the Goo family, which led to its current success. Jeff's eyes flashed with hatred. I have been living in anonymity for many years. Now I have returned to take back everything that belongs to the Goo family. So, you approached me, really to get revenge on the Cheen family? Sherry's heart sank. Initially, yes, Jeff admitted, but after meeting you, I realized you and Porter aren't the same kind of people. Especially after learning that Gary is my son, my feelings for you are genuine. He turned to Sherry. Sherry, I admit my initial motives weren't pure, but now I genuinely want to be with you and give Gary a complete family. Sherry's feelings were complicated. Jeff's honesty surprised her, but the feeling of being used was still unpleasant. I need some time to calm down. The following week, Sherry deliberately avoided Jeff. However, fate dealt her another bombshell. She discovered she was pregnant again. A medical examination confirmed Sherry was 6 weeks pregnant. It was clearly conceived during the period when her relationship with Jeff was at its most harmonious. Just as Sherry was hesitating about how to tell Jeff the news, a bombshell news broke in the business world. M Group was hostilely acquiring Cheen's shares, causing Cheen's stock price to plummet and facing a bankruptcy crisis. Then Porter came to her door, looking haggard and completely unlike his usual self. Sherry, please help me. Porter practically pleaded. Jeff is trying to kill me. Only you can persuade him to stop. Sherry frowned. Business competition is none of my business. It's not just business competition. Porter exclaimed, he fabricated evidence to frame my father for hiring someone to commit murder. Now my father has been taken away for investigation. Sherry was stunned. If Jay really did hire someone to kill someone, then the victim was. He accused my father of murdering his parents. Porter's words confirmed her suspicions. After Porter left, Sherry was in a state of turmoil. If Jay really was the murderer of Jeff's parents, then Jeff's revenge would be understandable. But if he fabricated evidence, that would be going too far. That evening, Jeff came to see her. He seemed to know that Porter had been there, and said directly, Porter came to see you? Don't listen to his nonsense. I have solid evidence that Jay hired someone to kill you. Then why didn't you just call the police? Why did you have to use business tactics to bring down the Qin family first? Sherry questioned. I want him to suffer the same pain my father endured. Jeff's eyes were filled with hatred. He'll lose everything first, and then face legal punishment. Sherry felt like a stranger looking at Jeff. Hatred had consumed his heart. Jeff, stop, Sherry said softly. I believe in justice. If Jay is guilty, the law will punish him. But you shouldn't let hatred blind you and become like the person you hate. Jeff was stunned, seemingly having never considered this question before. And, Sherry stroked her still flat belly, you're about to have a new family, and Gary needs an upright father to set an example. Jeff's gaze fell on her hand, his pupils contracting slightly. You are pregnant again? Sherry nodded. So, for our sake, let go of the hatred, okay? Jeff remained silent for a long time before finally pulling her into his arms. Okay, I promise you. The following day, Jeff withdrew his attacks on the Qin Group's business and handed over all evidence to the police. An investigation confirmed Jay's connection to a 20-year-old cold case, and he was ultimately arrested. The Qin Group was taken over by Porter. Although its power was greatly diminished, its foundation was preserved. Afterwards, Porter came to thank Sherry, saying with a wry smile, I never expected you to save me in the end. Sherry, I'm sorry for everything I've done to you. Sherry accepted the apology readily. Past grievances, with the passage of time, no longer mattered. 3 months later, Jeff knelt down on one knee before Sherry during a meticulously planned proposal. Sherry, meeting you is the greatest miracle of my life. You not only gave me a son, but also taught me the true meaning of forgiveness and love. Marry me, and let me spend the rest of my life protecting you and our children. Gary jumped excitedly beside her. Mommy, say yes. I want Uncle to be my dad. Sherry smiled and held out her hand. Okay. The wedding was simple and warm. Sherry wore a pure white wedding dress, and Gary was the flower boy. Everything was so perfect. On their wedding night, Jeff held Sherry close, gently stroking her slightly protruding belly. Thank you for coming into my life. Sherry nestled in his arms, feeling a sense of security she had never known before. Perhaps fate had dealt her a heavy blow, but in the end, it had given her the best arrangement. Under the moonlight, their figures, embracing, became one. Having weathered the storm, they finally welcomed the most beautiful rainbow of their lives. And their happy story had only just begun.